space, we about to figure out if he could break Bitcoin with some of the smartest devs I know. If y'all could come to the stage, moderated by the drippiest man I know right now, CB Spears.
Okay, so I could invite everybody to introduce themselves, but I want to get right to it. We got Max from Hemi, Casey from Ordinals, Jeremy from Stealth, Cypher from Wizards. There's something in the water this past year because, like, we've seen people extend things on top of Bitcoin for a long time, but it feels like it really kicked off this past year. What's going on? Max, Cypher, Jeremy, Casey, what's going on?
Some guy came along and released a meta protocol that happened to attract large numbers of eyes and a time period where Bitcoin was probably the most boring it had ever been for development. So you had this weird cascade where more people wanted to come in because fun stuff's being built, and more developers wanted to build fun stuff because more people were coming in. Previously, we hadn't really seen that. We'd seen, developers leaving over the previous years due to fraudulent lawsuits, and a lot of these economic or social or even legal factors kind of tearing away at the fun of building on Bitcoin. And we kind of just needed a jump start. And again, Casey managed to be the guy who found the pull cord to get the motor running again.
For what it's worth, I'm actually deeply confused as to why Ordinals and inscriptions, you can point to tons and tons and tons of different protocols that were built on Bitcoin. Counterparty, the Omni layer, right, which was the original vehicle for Tether, the largest stablecoin in the world. Oodles and oodles and oodles of different protocols and things on top of Bitcoin. I honestly don't exactly know why Ordinals and inscriptions were what sort of kicked off Bitcoin Season 2. Again, here we are.
It seemed to me like everyone, meta protocols in the old days kind of died off. Everyone was like, well, that's boring. And then somebody finally kickstarted it again, and everyone just jumped right back on the boat. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah, I'm just doing my thing.
Particularly a lot of ossification, people who would self-describe as ossification adjacent. Okay, well, we can, if we want to do something on Bitcoin, we can just build it. We don't need to change the base layer. The market engineers will figure out how to do it. And it's funny because I feel like all those same people are also then simultaneously criticizing Orb. But to me, it feels like these things are actually just us figuring out how to do a lot of the things that we want to on top of Bitcoin. It seems that what we see is these new extensions and ideas on top of Bitcoin are us and the market experimenting on this. Do you guys see this the same way, or how would you extend on what I'm talking about here?
I think what you're saying is sort of inevitable, is that a lot of Bitcoiners, and especially Bitcoin Core developers, are really focused on aesthetic. I think of core developers as artisans rather than engineers. They're really focused on the quality of their craft and maybe not necessarily other attributes of that. How pleasing is it that this is the way that I built this thing? And I think that because of that functionality that people wanted, and maybe they wanted it not in the most clean way, and they were asking for it really directly, it was, well, we're going to figure out a way to make it even shinier and even more rounded rectangles and that kind of design fixation. And then it's sort of like this eye of the needle of very difficult to find. And once that was found, the functionality came out, and it came out awful. Ordinals suck, runes suck, BitVM sucks. They all suck, they're bad, they're not how you would do it. And so I think that's where there's a lot of hatred, is it's just not how you would do it, but now it's figured out that it could be done. And I think that makes aesthetic-driven people very unhappy.
Yeah, you have a bunch of engineers who have optimized a specific problem set, and to be very clear, they've done so very, very well. As much as I will rag on Bitcoin Core before anybody else, they have managed to keep a working client for as far back as you could possibly want to go in Bitcoin, barring, I believe, 2 breaks, where if you're trying to go through the versions for fun, you'll have a bad time. but then we present them with this whole new world of like, oh yeah, by the way, you've been thinking adversarially, you've been worrying about attackers of Bitcoin, but you haven't been thinking about those of us who are on Bitcoin are like, we're bringing the attacks with us in quotes of like, we want these things. We're going to realize that the pastry shaped wheels or the wheel shaped pastries that you've been baking are delicious and we're going to call them donuts.
I feel like we've beaten this horse to death, but like, do any of these things actually break Bitcoin?
No, not at all. It's always funny. So back in the day, I did another project where we were accused of spamming Bitcoin. We were taking 30% of Bitcoin block space, and the reason is because nobody else wanted it. Nobody was paying for it, but everyone was sure that was going to break Bitcoin, and I think it's still running. So I think we're going to be okay.